Hello and welcome to this webinar on IT outsourcing and cybersecurity. This will be a fireside chat hosted by two renowned cybersecurity experts, Swati Sharma, who's the lead InfoSec officer at Amazon Pay, and Kaushik Pandey, vice president here at ControlCase. I'm Evan Travis, and I'm on the video team at ControlCase. Before we begin the main presentation, a few housekeeping items. This webinar will run approximately 45 minutes. If you have any questions, please place them in the questions window. Our moderators will pass them on, and we will either answer them live or by email if we run short of time. If you experience any audio or visual issues, please type them into the chat window and our moderators will address them. A summary and a recording of this webinar will be sent to everyone early next week. Please visit our website at www.controlcase.com for more webinars. A little bit about ControlCase. We at ControlCase have one focus: IT compliance and related certifications. Compliance and continuous compliance services are a key area of focus in what we do for our customers. We are not checklist auditors. By contrast, we partner with our customers in our assessments and audits. We utilize our proprietary software called the ControlCase Compliance Hub to automate and streamline our processes. Finally, our flagship offering is known as One Audit, where customers can do a single assessment and get compliant with or certified to multiple regulations. And with that, I'll pass it over to our main presentation. Let's get started.
Just taking a little bit background, we do understand that in today's era, the need for IT outsourcing is enormous, right? Especially when the global economy is turning here and there. So at the same time, when organizations are looking forward to outsource their IT activities to different countries based upon, let's say, the different models, like it can be an onshore or onshore or nearshore, depending upon, let's say, the IT security strategies. Organizations are also required to tackle the security gaps, the threats, the vulnerabilities, and accordingly devise a solution as well, because that is what you can say the IT team, the IT security team is there for. And to help us with the same, we have over here our industry expert who have been leading similar cybersecurity practices from quite some time. I know her from more than a decade or so. And we all welcome Swati. Hey Swati, how are you? It's really great to have you with us. And we really thank you, because we know that you are always jam-packed with different teams, as we all know that, okay, cyber intruders never let you sleep peacefully. So thanks a lot today for taking our time and enlightening us and the audience, of course, with the best practices around IT outsourcing and things like that. So can you just help us with the, let's say, help the audience with a brief about like what all milestones, what all things have you been doing so far, so that the team, the audience can get a context, please?
Thanks, Kaushik, for inviting me for this session. And we know each other for a long time, and I think thanks for giving that generous introduction. So those who have not interacted with me in past, or those who have like never seen me on social media or in other platforms, my name is Swati Sharma. I'm working with Amazon. I'm taking care of global security policies right now. I'm taking care of policy exceptions, strategy decisions, security governance, data classification, and some of these aspects. Before moving to this role, I was in AWS. I was taking care of Indian financial industry customers and helping them in onboarding to AWS. Before that, I worked with British Telecom, taking care of PCI DSS and GDPR, third-party security related risk. And I started my career with CISA Information, which is a PCI company. And there I have interacted with multiple customers to help them on PCI, risk assessment, and other areas. So that's all about me. Over to you, Kaushik.
Thanks a lot, Swati, for the same. And having said that, Swati has also been on the cover page of many cybersecurity magazines as well in the past. She is very generous. She doesn't tell us that much about herself. But having said that, if you do a little bit of Google search around Swati Sharma, all right, you will get lots of articles around the same. All right. So having said that, we have brought an expert over here who will be able to help us in understanding the entire IT outsourcing and how exactly it works and things like that. So let's start with the most basic question of all, right? If let's say an organization is quite new in IT outsourcing, they are just planning to outsource a few of the IT service providers, let's say IT services to different service providers. What exactly will be your definition about IT outsourcing, specifically around IT outsourcing? Because outsourcing can be of different terms, right? So what do we mean around IT outsourcing? If you can help us, Swati.
So I'll keep it very naive or very simple, Kaushik. I'll say let expert do their job. So if IT is not your core business, if it's not your core objective, let experts do their job. So companies who have been expert in developing applications, softwares, let them develop software for you or build application for you. If you have not been managing servers or if you don't know how to manage servers, let IT hosting companies take care of it or let cloud companies do their work. Uh, Depending on what you want to achieve, anything which is related with IT, it can include your utility, application, software, IT infrastructure, uh, including IT services, managed services. All that can be done by third parties, and that's typically called IT outsourcing.
Great. Thanks a lot for that, Swati. And I believe that the audience will also resonate with this, especially the audience whosoever would have joined from the Indian subcontinent as well. We are not new to the IT services getting outsourced to us. And having said that, anything or everything around IT which is outsourced, let's say from somewhere or the other to us, or let's say when I say to us, to means any of us, for finishing off that particular job on behalf of somebody else, that is IT outsourcing. And very well said by Swati as well, that okay, how exactly it works. And having said that, because I know Swati from you from a long time, I know that okay, you have been a part of many of the C-level meetings as well, the C-level executive meetings as well. And I know that okay, you have seen the IT strategies as well being developed. You have seen how exactly it has grown from the past, let's say, more than a decade or so. So, based upon your interaction with the other C-level executives and with the other leaders, where exactly does this IT outsourcing fit in the entire IT strategy development era? Can you just help us with that?
Sure. I think this need to be combined or aligned with two portions, Kaushik. One is your overall business outsourcing is strategy, IT strategy, and where it fits for IT outsourcing is strategy. You need to identify what you want to deliver. Do you have that expertise in-house? Do you want to rely on outsiders like third parties for that? When you want it, I think uh, time for launch, right, or go to market is a key decision maker when we are considering all these factors. So let's assume even if you have bandwidth to develop that in house, but you know that it will take longer, but if you partner with third party, you can go to market faster. Companies take this decision. So considering what you want to achieve, when you want to achieve, do you have in-house skills or expertise, bandwidth, time to go to market, and then this IT outsourcing strategy can be aligned. But again, this has to be mapped back with your business outsourcing, business strategy, and overall IT strategy. What is your long term plan, 5 to 10 years, 3 years, immediate? So, based on that, you can draft what you want to achieve through this IT outsourcing.
Great, awesome, Swati. And I believe that it perfectly resonates with how you started the definition of IT outsourcing as well. That do what you do best, do the business, outsource your IT services, IT security services or whatnot to different service providers who already have, let's say, an experience in a similar domain, because they will have more competence around it. As you very rightly mentioned, that it needs to align with your roadmap as well for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line. And it's not just about being cost effective. Means, of course, it will be cost effective because that's why you are outsourcing something which you can do it by yourself and outsourcing to a different third party. But at the end of the day, it just doesn't end up being a cost-effective solution. It's also about more competence. It's also about more knowledge. It's also about more experience as well in a similar domain. And having said that, also they'll maintain your BCP as well. In the case, let's say you fall short of, then they will have enough people or resources to manage the thing. So thank you, Swati, for the same. And building on, let's say, the similar terms, what we let's say just discussed about the IT strategy development, and we have seen plenty of things around the same. One more, you can say, one more point, one more strategy resonates, let's say, familiarizes us over here when we talk about supply chain management as well, because recently we have seen lots and lots of threat vectors, vulnerabilities, breaches happening around supply chain management. A different service provider gets breached, gets attacked, and accordingly the customer also gets impacted in the same manner. And based upon my limited understanding, they might be somewhere related as well, like IT outsourcing and supply chain management, right, in a similar manner. So what exactly are your views around this? Like, how exactly is IT outsourcing related to supply chain management, specifically from a cybersecurity standpoint?
I think there is overlap. If I can simplify it, right? There is overlap between supply chain management and this IT outsourcing part. But one thing that we have to remember when we are talking about this IT outsourcing part, the risk is on a higher side. It's not like any other outsourcing, right? Even in case of normal outsourcing, we have seen that how those vendors have impacted the overall security of the organization. If you remember, there was one payment data breach where not core IT system, but the HVAC systems were compromised, and then it further led to the cardholder data breach. If those kind of vendors can be targeted, right? Imagine some companies which have access to your servers or which are building applications for you. So there is a overlap when we are talking about supply chain management and this IT outsourcing, but we should not treat it as same. The risks which are associated with IT outsourcing is, I mean, I'll say that they are on higher side.
Got it, Swati. So, and as you rightly mentioned, the HVAC systems being used, or let's say the systems of the HVAC service provider being used to compromise the customer. And in a similar manner, many of the, I believe, hospitality companies as well, in the recent past have gone breached because of their service providers' credentials getting compromised at the end of the day, right? So n number of different breaches happening, and I believe the cyber intruders are just looking for that one mistake, and that particular one mistake can be at the customer's end or at the service provider's end, whosoever. And I believe that is one of the point where when we are choosing, let's say, the third-party service provider for the IT outsourcing, I believe all these due diligence should be done at that particular manner, right? So I think what exactly you say about this? That okay, what exact due diligence we should be doing around the same?
I think start with what you are looking for, what kind of impact that service provider will have on your overall cybersecurity, how much access they have, how much data you are sharing with them. Are they giving you just something which you can customize, secure by yourself, and then they have no relation, like in terms of your production environment? Assume that they have access continuously to your production environment. So based on where they are sitting in that risk tier, I think you need to assess the risk associated and do the due diligence. Putting all the eggs in like same bucket will be also like of too much, and you'll not be able to assess the right supply chain related risk associated with that particular vendor. So identify where that vendor is sitting in terms of risk in your cybersecurity chain, and then perform the due diligence based on that. Minimum things that need to be done is that you have to understand how they're dealing with your data, what they're doing with it. Do you have control over your data? Sometime organization, they assume that outsourcing is like transfer of risk. Answer is like, don't assume that it's a transfer of risk. It's actually sharing of risk, and how much you are sharing with them, and the moment you are sharing it with them, how they are taking care of it. Ultimately, you are accountable for your data, your processes, your IT infrastructure. So considering that, due diligence has to be in proportion to the risk that is associated. Don't go overboard, don't do like under protection, be in balance of what actually need to be protected.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Swati, for that. And I believe one of the latest regulator also said in their IT outsourcing guidelines that whenever you are trying to outsource, just taking your words over here, what you just mentioned, just by doing an outsourcing of IT services, it doesn't mean that, let's say, the risk is being transferred or the other service provider will be able to apply lesser controls.
Yes,
Assume that, okay, the same controls what you would have applied if you would have taken that particular service insured. The similar kind of, let's say, greater than that level of cybersecurity control should be
exactly,
implemented, right? Okay,
exactly.
fantastic, fantastic, Swati. It's always nice to interact with you on these particular patterns, and I believe that now we'll try to cut some core as well, and specifically we'll talk about, let's say, from the company which is ever growing in nature, and I believe everyone knows about the regular company as well. So let's talk about AWS as well in some manner, right? Now we know that AWS is a giant over here, right? When it comes to IT outsourcing, when it comes to similar manner, and I know that, okay, tackling risk in AWS will be like gigantic in nature. I cannot even imagine how exactly AWS would be, because each and every eyes is on AWS at the end of the day, right? So what exactly words of wisdom you can give us from, let's say, from AWS perspective, that, okay, how exactly is AWS tackling the risk in IT outsourcing from a customer perspective? Because at the end of the day, all the customers will be relying on AWS, all right, that they'll be maintaining top-notch security, which I know that, okay, yes, they maintain it quite well as well. So what exactly are your views around it?
So, I mean, based on my work in the AWS days, I think one thing which is at the core is that whatever we are building, it's for customer, right? Imagine that a company which is building their services, their products for a regulated customer, right? So AWS is offering services to financial customer, government customer. So their baseline is so high that if someone need to move to AWS, they will get the baseline which is like higher from the normal infrastructure. What is a secret recipe? And it's not like secret anymore actually. So imagine the economy of scale, right? AWS has, or cloud service provider has. They can invest much more than any other company because they have they are building it for many more customers, and because they are building it for lot more customers, they have more investment. They can build, or they can invest in skills which are required to build a secure infrastructure or secure services that are being consumed by the customers or their enterprise customer. One thing which is important, that no matter how secure your cloud provider is, you have to understand the shared responsibility model. If you assume that everything is being taken care by cloud service provider and you don't have to do anything, you'll be going wrong. Based on what services are being consumed, understand what is a shared responsibility model. What are the controls which are being taken care by the cloud provider? What are the controls which are being which you need to take care of? For the controls which are being taken care by the cloud service provider, make sure that you have artifacts, information, evidence to ensure or to get the assurance, so that you can also provide that assurance to your regulators, your auditor. For example, if you need to be PCI DSS compliant and you decided to go with infrastructure as service, you need to ensure that requirement 9 of PCI DSS, which is related with physical security control, AWS's AOC covers requirement 9 in detail as per your requirement. Similarly, if you want to use some service in your regulated or scoped environment, for example, you want to use HSM or KMS, you have to ensure that those services are covered in the audited scope of cloud service providers, so that if you want to use them, there is no constraint. So understand what you want to use, whether it is covered in the audited scope or not, or compliance scope. Do the assurance, perform the check. One thing which I feel that, and it's based on the interaction that I had in during AWS days, that companies focus too much on only on the cloud side. They don't focus on the security in the cloud side, which is very important. If you look at the security breaches which happened in cloud, those happen because of the misconfiguration, and misconfigurations are mostly in control of customers or hosted entities. uh, Physical security controls, companies give a lot of emphasis, but trust me, companies like any cloud provider, I mean, I'm not talking only about the AWS, but any cloud service provider, for them, if it's their bread and butter, right, they'll not mess on some of the like fundamental requirements. Where things go wrong, if customers don't understand what they need to implement and they miss on that part, they are not focusing on how to configure cloud. I was reading one report which used to say that cloud is secure. Are you using it securely? So I think that's the baseline that I would use. That cloud is secure. Are you using it securely is a like fundamental thing.
Absolutely, absolutely, Swati. I believe that okay, your last statement was bang on in nature. That okay, the cloud is always secure, but are you using it securely? Are you configuring it securely in a particular manner? And I believe that majority of these things boil down to the responsibility matrix, which is being maintained between a cloud service provider and the customer. And after that, let's say the next level is understanding that responsibility matrix as well. So let's say the customer team should be able to get a real good clarity on the responsibility matrix. And because I have worked with you as well for a few of the certifications over cloud, and I've seen that okay, AWS maintains top-notch security. Even we were not able to get evidences as well for our compliances many of the times. So no access, nothing. That level of let's say security is being maintained over there in AWS. So it's really top notch in nature. Having said that, so that was about AWS and how exactly it let's say helps protect majority of the customers, including majority of the customers who would have joined this particular call as well. And let's try to change some trajectory and try to go into the legal aspect over here, right? Because the IT outsourcing is not just related to the IT security, which let's say you and me are managing, but also depends upon the legal as well. Because whenever the IT outsourcing is happening, the legal as well come into picture, right? And there are many laws, regulations, standards which come under picture. So what exactly are views around it? That are the organizations following it, or let's say what exactly they should follow at the end of the day? Okay, whenever they are looking forward for IT outsourcing. Swati.
I think it's important that the interpretation is being done properly. Again, I'm going back on my AWS days. I used to go in meetings where people say that I heard that this is a requirement, and when you ask them where it is written, there wasn't any evidence. So when you're talking about these regulatory requirement, I think start with what is written. Engage your lawyer, understand what it says, and talk to industry experts as well to understand the how it is being implemented and adopted. I think based on that, you start implementation and evaluation part. I think these are non-negotiable in nature. I mean, honestly speaking, if someone is asking me, or if I'm sitting at the side where I'm responsible for taking care of these requirements, legal, regulatory, these things will be non-negotiable for me. I'll not mess up on these requirements. At the same time, I'll make sure that I'm interpreting it in a correct way. I'm not doing or overboarding there, right? If I'm in doubt, I'll go and ask and use the communication channels which are there with the regulators to understand the right interpretation, and then start going in the implementation side, talk to the industry leaders or your community, and then go for like choosing the right service provider for that. For service providers, no, again, not meeting these requirements, it's like a business edge, right? If they don't meet applicable regulatory requirement, they'll not be able to serve to the customer. So for them also, it's like an indirect mandate that they have to follow. How you will ensure that they're meeting it or not? Go and like call with them, understand what they're meeting. Is there any assurance around it? For example, are they impaneled with METI, right? For example, if it's a cloud provider, are they providing you certifications around SOC to PCI based on what you're looking for? And if required, go on call, discuss it with them, ask that how other customers have done it in like in that particular region, data residency or data controlship. So how those requirements are being met, understand and then go for it. Data residency is something which is like it's changing or it's evolving over the time. So based on where your customers are, what are the regulation applicable, how you're hosting your data, where you are hosting your data, how you can ensure that the applicable laws and requirements are being can be enforced and auditable. So I think these are some steps that need to be taken, but don't go by hearsay. I think a lot of time they heard it, they have not read it, they have not interpreted it, and they're just going by like, okay, someone has said something and must be true, and they go by it.
Correct, correct. Fantastic. And the last point about the data residency, I believe it was a bang on. Because I believe each and every country, each and every nation state is coming out with their own guidelines around the data residency, that it cannot cross their border at any point in time. If it's crossing, then what will, let's say, things have to be maintained. The first copy has to be kept in some other place, blah, 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 and everything, right? And I believe that just to add to what Swati mentioned, so whenever, let's say, we are looking at the legalities, please do not, let's say, please do not just focus on the IT aspects of it or the the IT Act. Also focus on the privacy as well, the privacy factors, because that will be a deal breaker. I'm telling you, right? Because if, let's say, the IT outsourcing has been done in India, but the data is coming from Europe, or let's say from any of the European nation, then you have to be in compliance with GDPR, even though you are in India, right? Because the local law of land of Europe stands there in India.
Right.
So all these things need to be taken care of whenever you are planning for IT outsourcing. So the legal team, whosoever you are hiring, they should be, you can say, working on a state-of-the-art architecture altogether. Otherwise, at a later point in time, in the case of an incident, which fingers crossed shouldn't happen, but in the case of an incident, these things are something which helps you. If you have like an airtight, you can say the contracts, the legals, and all those things, whatever you have by agenda. So now coming from a global and talking about local in India, right, Swati? So how do you think that India is tackling the IT outsourcing and things like that? Are there any relevant regulations being developed in India around it? Is any regulator helping us with the same around IT outsourcing?
I think India understood that IT outsourcing is like one of their fundamental or core service sector where we are doing very well, right? We are serving to like global entities, multinationals. There have been always outsourcing guidelines and mandates in place. If I talk about RBI, like in a financial space, they had guidelines which they published in 2016. 23 and then 2003, and they have published it recently also for these specific segments. For example, payment companies, they have launched recently IT outsourcing guidelines. I think one thing which is understood by the regulators are that these guidelines have to be enabler. They need to address the risks which are associated with IT outsourcing, but at the same time, they don't want this innovation to be restricted. So they are enabling, they are giving multiple options to the entities so that they can comply with the regulations or requirements so that they can address the data protection or security related requirement. But at the same time, they are not trying to hinder their progress or innovation. So I think there is fair balance if I talk about these IT outsourcing guidelines. Similarly, IRDAI also has like pretty detailed IT outsourcing guidelines. Similarly, SEBI has multiple IT outsourcing guidelines depending on which segment of regulation you are tied with. And for other segment, if we talk about try also have similar requirements. And then in general also, METI and certain, they have guidelines around what need to be assessed when IT outsourcing is being done.
Thanks for that, Swati. So as rightly being mentioned by Swati, RBI is one of the front-running regulator over there when it comes to, let's say, managing that how exactly IT outsourcing should be done at the end of the day. And recently they released one of the guidelines. The draft came, I believe, in 2022, and right now the final version has been released. And for those of you who haven't seen it, please go through it, because it's for the regulated entities from RBI. And let's say the regulated entities need to make sure that their service providers, if there are any agreements which are done, then there are certain dates as well which has been mentioned over there. So you have to be in compliance before the particular date. Like if let's say before October 1, 2023, if your agreement has, let's say, up for renewal, then with the outsourcing directions, you have to be in compliance latest by April 10, 2024. However, if there is an agreement which comes for renewal after October 1, 2023, then let's say you get 2 more years. So by April 10, 2026, you have to be in compliance. However, if let's say any organization is going for such an agreement after October 1st, 2023, then from the date of that particular agreement itself, you have to be in compliance with the latest guidelines, right? So please have a look at it, and it is specifically for the regulated entities as such, and it's for the IT outsourcing, which is there, okay? And there are certain exclusions as well over there, and they have particularly mentioned that what are the exclusions, who all come under this particular, let's say, IT outsourcing, or let's say IT service provider listing, and things like that. And it's also applicable to let's say the SOC service providers as well. Okay, so they have 2 different annexures over there. One is around the cloud service providers, and the second is around the SOC service providers. So if you are any one of the two, please go have a look at it, that accordingly you can understand better how to manage the regulated entities from let's say here. So coming to let's say the end of this particular fireside chat, I should say, Swati, what exactly will be your advice? Because you have seen threats, you have seen breaches as well. I know that, okay, you would have investigated a few breaches as well in your past, and you have seen how organizations who, because you have been an auditor yourself, so you have seen organizations that, okay, who show that they are top notch. They have all the, let's say, the top notch cybersecurity team, the tools, technologies, and everything. But when you went for the audit, you saw that, okay, everything is just showbiz, right? So, Swati, what exactly will be your suggestion to our audience over here when they're trying to outsource their IT?
I think again I'll go back on the risk side, right? If you're sharing your critical data uh, directly, indirectly, or giving access to your critical infrastructure, critical data, please make sure that you are doing it proper due diligence in terms of ongoing compliance and security. So it should not be just a piece of paper that someone has provided you. You have to ask question to ensure that you are getting enough assurance in terms of ongoing security and ongoing compliance. Don't overtrust your service provider in terms of, if there are some controls that you need to take care of on top of service provider control, go for it. And there has to be a proper assurance program, third party security program, which is taking care of these service providers on regular basis. It should not be just one time activity at the onboarding. It should be defined based on the frequency. For example, if it is like highly sensitive data that you are sharing, a critical third party for you, it can be 6 monthly annual assessments. It can be due diligence based on the documents that they are providing. It can be questionnaire based on where in which risk tier they are sitting on. Involve your team. It can be including your compliance officers, your lawyers. Understand what are the applicable mandatory requirement from regulatory and compliance point of view, including your local laws or industry standard requirements. On top of that, risk assessment need to be performed to identify security controls that need to be inbuilt or to be implemented. Assess the third party guidelines. For example, if you know that there is vulnerability which is like known at that point of particular time, how that has been aggregated or the how that can be addressed for that particular service provider. If there's something which is like known problem areas for your partner, or if they have bad track record, I think those questions need to be asked rigorously before you make your decision.
Great. So I believe that the hard talks should be done during the initial days itself, rather than to repent later, because we don't know that okay what will happen at a later point in time, right? And one particular point which Swati has been, I believe she would have repeated at least 10 times till now, is about risk assessment, is about risk governance as well. So a team audience, please take a note of it, that the risk assessment plays a very crucial role when you are trying to outsource your IT services to a third party service provider. And how exactly you can do that? There are n number of ways, but one particular thing which we always suggest is, first of all, identify the data, classify the data, right? Accordingly, you'll be able to understand the criticality of the data which you are trying to share with a third party. Because believe me, when you share with a third party, you are not just sharing it with that particular third party, but that particular third party service provider might be having their own service providers as well,
Agree.
right? So it's a long ending chain. You might not be able to identify the tail of it. So whenever you are doing that, please do a data classification, and then accordingly, based upon your, let's say, your risk asset register, try to identify if you want to really outsource this particular data, handling of this particular data, to a third party service provider. And if, let's say, by all means you have to, then the stricter the security controls should be based upon the criticality of the data which you have, right? Fantastic, Swati. It was really good when you pitched on that risk assessment, and you didn't lose the hold as well. You particularly said, okay, risk assessment, and I absolutely agree with you. So any last words from you, Swati, before we move to the Q&A, and any last words which you have around the IT outsourcing and things like that?
I think one thing that I have noticed, right? So I was reading few days back that some of the large companies like Capital One, BP, they have closed their own data centers and they have decided to move to AWS. So companies, so how it started, right? 10 years or 15 years back, they thought that okay, IT is something that they can invest, they can like build their own infrastructure, they can run it. But over the time they realized that no, it's not their core business. Their core business is probably finance or banking, and IT is not something that they need to get into. So they identify the right partner and they have like outsourced it. So there are success stories where they identified what should be their focus, who should be the right partner in their journey, and how to build that partnership, and at the same time how to address the cybersecurity compliance and regulatory risk with the proper partnership and sharing. So I think don't be scared with IT outsourcing or with your partners. Do proper due diligence and identify right strategy to go for it.
Thanks a lot for that, Swati. And I believe that okay, we cannot thank you much more for taking out time for us, because you really have provided many words of wisdom, many let's say corporate intelligence to us, which is not present in books, or let's say, which is not present in regulations or the standards, whatever, let's say, because when we look at a standard, we look at the best practices, but when it actually gets implemented on the ground, the reality is a bit different. And you rightly mentioned all the things from the similar line. So thanks a lot. And there are lots and lots of questions which are popping up. I'll just take a few of them depending upon, let's say, the time which we have. So the first question which we have over here is that we have a merchant who have more than like 500 stores or so, and e-commerce workplace, and they are outsourcing to, or they're planning to outsource their call center services. So they're asking our expert opinion as to what risks they should cater to when they are trying to outsource their BPO or the call center services. Swati.
I think they should start with when this call center is being introduced. These call center agents, are they going to handle their critical data? For example, are they going to handle payment information for their customer? Are they going to access uh, financial information, right? If answer is yes, the applicable regulations and the industry standard, for example, PCI-DSS applicability that need to be identified. When we are talking about these third parties, need to identify that what is going to be voice infrastructure. IT infrastructure is generally being taken care with more emphasis by now, like people understand like how important it is. But voice network, what kind of voice network is being used, and what will be the technology used to secure the data over it. So for example, if call recording is happening, how that is being handled. If the truncation, scrapping of the data is happening there, how it is being taken care. If the regulations are applicable on those part of the data, how that is being taken care of. So I think all those new uh, details need to be understood before you are going in that direction. On top of that, based on your geography, there can be applicable laws that need to be handled. For example, if you are in EU, or your data centers are in EU, or your customers are in EU, how that need to be addressed. Privacy aspect need to be taken care well if you are handling customer data, customer personal identifiable information through those call centers or over the calls.
Great. Thanks. Swati. And I believe that Swati might not tell you guys the same, but when she used to do audit at that time, she would have identified a lot of customers having CV2 as well, or the PIN value as well being stored. Although as per PCI compliance, you cannot, right? And they have been compliant as well from past many years. But when she went for audit, she identified that okay, it's there in the logs, there's a database, n number of different places, right? So as rightly being mentioned, please have a look at which all compliances you need to maintain, and accordingly see are they maintaining it as well, or let's say other service providers as well maintaining the same thing. ControlCase is a particular tool known as a compliance finder tool, which you can go and check. So if you're a BPO organization, if you're any of these organizations, you can just let's say type in your business over there, that what kind of business you have. It will be able to tell you which all compliances you need to maintain and how exactly you should be maintaining as well. That is something which is a word of thought over here. The next question which we have is that from a regulatory entity, which is saying that okay, they're planning to outsource their payment switch to a third party. What security measures should be maintained by them?
Okay, so I think when you're talking about payment switch, there can be two type of regulations. I'm talking about India specific geography right now. RBI has certain requirements which are like directly coming for these segments, right? And then on top of that, PCI-DSS requirement. You need to clearly understand that are these service providers going to be directly regulated, or the regulation piece will remain with you and they will be just your IT service provider, or they'll be hosting it on your behalf. So what is going to be the relationship or the agreement in terms of the security and compliance obligation? And again, what will be the model? Will they be just building it for you, then you'll be running it, they'll be running it on your behalf, they'll have constant access on top of it? So how that all operational aspects are going to be worked upon, that need to be understood, where they are going to host it, in India, outside India. If they are planning to do it outside India, are they taking care of RBI data localization aspect? So all those things need to be understood well before making that decision. And that's the, I think, payment switch. When you're talking about, you're actually talking about a heavy piece. People who have seen payment side of the word, they understand like the moment you say payment switch, it's actually a heavy piece in the entire payment ecosystem that someone is referring to.
Great. So Swati, I believe I couldn't agree with you more. And I believe last year, sometime when last year, sometime when RBI released the digital payment security controls, I believe that was one of the a combined framework for each and every payment security control, whatever was possible. So if you're planning to outsource your payment switch, please have a look at that as well and make sure that whatever is applicable, those kinds of payment security controls or the certifications your let's say IT outsourcer or the service provider is maintaining at the end of the day, right? The last question which we'll take, because we are just out of time. So the last question, which I'll take, of course, I'll choose from the ones. So based upon your experience, Swati, how exactly does big organizations manage their own IT outsourcing? And how exactly they give comfort to the organizations who are trying to outsource their IT services to such huge players? Because it's a two-way street, right? Okay,
Right.
I'm a big service provider. I'm a like a giant by myself, and many of the organizations are outsourcing the services to me. But I'll also be outsourcing my services as well to someone. So
Right.
how exactly the risks, the things are managed over there? Sorry.
I'll start with the first question or first part of the question, Kaushik. So, assume that you are an organization where you have like 10,000 plus service provider. You can't go and do due diligence with the same rigor or same scrutiny for all 10,000. So, you have to identify low hanging fruits, right? And then you have to identify who are at the risk, like, or posing maximum of the risk. Tiering starts playing important role, right? And you have to prioritize what you want to focus. It's not something that a lower tiered vendor is not of risk, but you know that it is a lower risk, and then you are deprioritizing it, or you are going with lesser scrutiny on that. It has to be balance of your operational aspect, right? If someone says go and audit all 10,000 vendors, probably it's not practical, it's not doable. So you have to identify what are your top 100 vendors, how you want to assess them. Start with your the point, incoming point, right? Engage with procurement team so that you know that what is the first point of contact when someone is being introduced in your environment. And then identify build process where if any outsourcing company is being introduced, you have guardrails in place to take care of compliance and security. Second part, I think IT service providers, where their core business is to offer services to customer, they have been super conscious about it, right? They know that they can't serve if they are not meeting the compliance requirement. And not meeting compliance and security requirement can be edge case for someone else. For example, if there is a data center not offering PCI DSS compliance or ISO 27000 compliance, someone else will be building the data center and saying that I'm PCI DSS compliant, I'm ISO 27001 compliant, come and like host your services on me. So that can become business differentiator. So they are conscious, they are playing important role in terms of maintaining the compliance so that they can offer more services to more customers, more regulated customers. At the same time, what need to be ensured is that those are not just like kept on surface. Actually those controls are being met. And how they're handling if it is coming to offering segregation or isolation between one customer to another customer. So I think due diligence is still required, but I think IT service providers or services, they're doing a little better job because they understand that if they don't offer security and compliance with right rigor, they will lose business pretty quick. Someone else will be building secure and compliant services and offer it in market.
Absolutely, absolutely, Swati. And I believe that, again, taking a cue from Swati's past experience, Swati would have done lots and lots of audits where when she went on site and when she went and talked to the customer, at that time, the customer said, okay, I need the compliance the next 1 month. Otherwise, I'll be breaching my MSA policy as well with the customer. Because if they are not compliant even for a day or so, then it would be a breach of their MSA, which they would have signed with, let's say, the end customer as well. And accordingly, they have to maintain their compliance certifications and things like that, right? Which is rightly being mentioned by Swati. So I believe that, okay, all the other questions, we'll just note it down and we'll share, let's say, a communication after this particular webinar with all of you. So first of all, thanks a lot for all the questions and bearing with us as well for the entire session. It's quite impressive that all of you took out time from a very, very busy schedule to listen to us. We are coming up with lots and lots of cybersecurity webinars followed by the fireside chat in a similar manner. So please bookmark us for all the latest updates. And again, thanks a lot, Swati, for being with us, answering all of the questions. And we wish you the best for all of your upcoming endeavors. Thanks a lot, Swati.
Thank you so much, Kaushik. And I think one last point that our audience should not miss, choosing right auditor is key, right? So they should engage with the auditors who are experienced in their field. They know their subject. They're not theoretical. They understand customer pain points. So people should engage someone like you, so that they can get right advice at the right point, and not just the theoretical stuff that people offer sometimes.
Lord Swati for those kind words. Although, believe me, guys, I didn't request her for any of these, but she's saying it from her heart, right? So, thanks a lot, team, for joining us, and have a very good rest of the day. Thanks a lot. Have a good one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have today. Hopefully you found this webinar useful. We have a few questions still from the audience that we will address in an email shortly. A summary and a recording of this webinar will be sent to everyone early next week. Please visit our website at www.controlcase.com for more webinars. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the time that you all have taken out of your day to join us. Have a great day, and until the next webinar, goodbye.